So the Chiefs are hosting the Colts, and when I think about themes of this game, and the Colts deserve to be the team talked about first, but you know how this thing goes. They didn't play last week. The Chiefs played last week and they lost, so this is topical. And I heard Jason ask his brother on New Heights today, who wins a game between this year's Chiefs team and the last year's Chiefs team? And I think Kelsey, if he thought last year's team would never say it, but he said the thing that everybody knows if you've watched this year's Chiefs team is they would win. They're better. They're more explosive. They got more top-end talent, and some of the holes that they had last year are now filled. Now, there's some subtle issues, but they're better. I think they're better, and numbers support that, okay? Now, there's this narrative that there's a regression to the mean. Regression to the mean is something that when I first heard it, I'm like, yeah, that sounds good. It's fucking regression to the mean, the whole thing. Like, that's obvious. Like, you can't be 11-0 in one-score games forever, and that might be true, but if you're regressing to the mean, that means average. Does it not, Macon?
That's right.
It's not median. It's mean. And when you're dealing with the mean, you're dealing with the average. Now, contextualize the deal. What do you think the average is in one-score games for a playoff caliber team? Well, it's probably not 0-5. So they have gone from the penthouse to the outhouse. That's more what I see when I look at this team and the results in the one-score game. So it's not as simple as, well, just what goes up must come down. Like, that would be true if they were 2-3 or 3-2. They're fucking 0-5, okay? And sometimes diving into numbers doesn't really help. You got to watch the tape. I don't have 2 days straight to just watch the Chiefs, okay? So I'm going to work on trying to tell you what's wrong with them in these one-score games, but right now I'm relying on the numbers. And I did some charting, and I found a couple things that I can reasonably say is a big difference between these two teams. For one, special teams EPA. It's terrible this year. Nolan, I texted you a picture of the EPA. I forget, but it's like minus 0.392 this year, and it's like the equivalent of going from like top 5 to bottom 5.
It was a majorly negative number.
It's a negative number. It's not good. So special teams haven't been great, but they've been bad there. Okay, but that doesn't explain it all. The second thing I found really interesting was this, guys. So you got to bear with me, but 2024 Chiefs in those 11 one-score games, I looked at first drive and then out of the half first drive because those are such important drives for offenses in the NFL, and they also, point to kind of schematics and your game planning and that whole thing. 11 one-score games this year. If you did points per drive, they were 1.9 points per drive, first drive and out of the half, which doesn't sound like much, but it's points, okay? They had a 9% turnover rate across the first half, first drive, and out of the half first drive, okay? Which is not terrible. It could be better. They turned the ball over a lot in those games last year. 38% success rate on those drives. That's a top 5 success rate, okay? So let's go to 2025. Again, we're looking at first drive out of the tunnel and first drive out of the tunnel out of the half. So 0.6 points per drive in those situations this year. So 1/3, they're scoring at a 1/3 rate this year compared to what they were last year in those very important drives that set the tone for the first half and the second half, and ultimately the game in some situations. 20% turnover rate, that's 2x last year's turnover rate in those drives, and a 30% success rate on those drives alone. That's bottom third. So they go from top 5 in success rate to bottom third in success rate on first drives and first drives out of the half. That's fucking crazy. Like, to me, it doesn't explain everything, but it explains a great deal. And I can't speak to schematically what the problem is on those drives. I'd have to go look at it. Maybe next week I'll get around to it, especially if the trend continues. But for me, if I was to hypothesize, and this is a total shot in the dark, sometimes when you're down bad like they were last year and you don't have your guys out there, scheme becomes really important. And you go out and you execute the offense, and you're less ambitious, and you're sticking to the script. They do have the godfather of modern offense as their head coach. Like, he's the offensive Bill Belichick, right? For whatever reason, and Mahomes has missed a lot of throws in games, but they have not capitalized this year on those first drives out of the tunnel and out of the half. So that's a bad deal. And I think some of it might be, hey, trying to do too much, right? I got all my toys back, and we're going to be more aggressive, and it's, the scheme takes a back seat and the players take a front seat. That's just a hypothesis. It's based on zero film study, okay? And next week I will look more closely at it. But these numbers are kind of wild to me. And to take it one step further, I said, let me look at 2024 Chiefs. I want to see, the turnovers, did they pay for them? Because that's also a big thing. Like when you turn the ball over in a game, and do you pay for them? Does your defense step up for you? Okay, 2024, in those 11 one-score games, 10 turnovers in one-score games, defense giving up 2.3 points per drive in those situations. That's a 60% score rate. Okay, 2025 Chiefs, 5 turnovers. Now, I omitted one before the half where they ran out of time and the clock hit 0 and they were just throwing a Hail Mary, okay? Defense giving up 4.8 points per drive in those situations and an 80% score rate. So situational football is kind of what I feel like it's coming down to. You can take the aggregate of all the numbers and say, damn, look at this fast car. It's even faster than last year. How are they losing? What's the regression to the mean? The mean is not 0 for 5, so it must be something else, and I think it's situational football. And when you look at the turnovers and you look at what the defense is doing, cleaning up after the offense's mistakes, because it's become a sloppy offense more than we're customarily used to seeing Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes teams look like over the last couple of years. Like if your defense isn't doing Herculean shit when you turn the ball over, well, things are going to change. And when the turnovers are happening, 2024 Chiefs, 3 of those turnovers happened in the second half, okay, in crunch time in the second half. You know what the defense did with those 3 turnovers? Turnover on downs, punt, and they scored a defensive touchdown, which I factored into the numbers of, what happens off of their turnover. Actually gave them 7 points back because their defense actually created 7 points for the offense. And then in 2025, all 5 of their turnovers have been in the second half. And on those possessions, as I said, the defense has not stood as tall as they did last year. So very subtle things, but in summation, I think it's how do you come out, beginning of the game. That's so important, right? Your script you think is a weapon for you. Got Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. It hasn't been. How do you come out of the half? Both coaches have 20 minutes to fucking get on a whiteboard and figure it out. They haven't done a good job of that for whatever reason. And then the turnovers when they happen and what your defense does when you turn the ball over. They haven't had that superpower. So suffice to say, I'm not telling you why the drives are not coming up, big for the Chiefs, but these drives out of the tunnel and out of the half have not worked out for them. They, and I do think when you turn on the tape, it might be because they're more ambitious this year and they're less paint by numbers. They're less trying to do things according to the plan. That's just a guess.